My name is Claudia Avar, and I am a kindergarten teacher in District 4. I'm also your virtual content specialist for kindergarten math. As with the other video, we looked at three different lessons. We looked at part 2 of day 5, and we're going to look at parts 1 and 2 of day 6. This time, we're going to focus more on the summary slides. Now, I know we've talked about the summary slides a lot in the last few weeks, but it's important that we always go back to kind of like wrap up the lesson. Make sure that we can do an informal assessment to know which students are understanding, which need additional support, and how we can better support them. So let's go ahead and get right into that. On day 10, the explore slide looks something like this. And it says, what did you think about when you were arranging your pattern blocks to make new shapes? What did you think about when you had to fill in the shape in a different way? Now let's look at the ones for day 11, which is part 1 of lesson 6. And the questions all kind of bounce off each other. How did you decide which pattern blocks you needed to fill in the shapes? And then on the second day, the second part of that lesson, the question is, do you think there are shapes hiding inside your pattern blocks too? Give an example. How can you use this to help you find more than one way to fill in the shapes? Now, it's really, really important that we focus because this is ultimately the goal, right? We want to make sure that our children know that there are other shapes that can fit, that there are pattern shapes that can fit inside of other pattern shapes, and also that there are multiple ways of doing one puzzle. So, what are some of the things that you want to hear them say? For example, on day 10, what did you think about when you were arranging your pattern blocks to make a new shape? You were thinking probably of a picture that you already had in your mind. Maybe you had a flower that you wanted to create and you were looking for shapes that bounced off that. All of these ideas that your children will give you, they're all acceptable because ultimately they are telling you what they want to create. Here, the question now says, what did you think about when you had to fill in the shape a different way? Now, this one's really important because as we were talking before, when they go into the pattern shapes app, which I'm going to go into now so I can better speak to it, you want to make sure that your children can see the shapes like here, and they can figure out other ways to share it. But what you really want to hear is that as they were looking into which shapes they wanted to put in here, they knew that they needed to fill in the darkened area, the shadowed area, the outline of the shape. They knew that their shapes couldn't stick out. Those are some of the conversations that you want to start having with your children. How did you decide which pattern blocks you needed to fill in the shapes? And this just gives you more insight into your children's thinking. Maybe your children are only comfortable knowing using the shapes that they know how to name. So you want to make sure that they step outside of that and you want to review the names of the shapes and you want to show them the different ways. Maybe your children are still stuck on how to move the shapes. So this is also a really good way to do this. You want to show them that when you bring the trapezoid over, yes, it totally fits that way, but you can also highlight it and move it. And in your mini lesson, we strongly suggest that you do this with them also, because it gives them another insight into using the same shapes. Obviously, they know that if they place it here, this does not fit. This is not a good fit, so they will not be able to do that. But all of this works up to the last summary slide, the final questions. Do you think that there are shapes hiding inside your pattern blocks too? Give an example. We want the children to say, yeah, I can definitely fit some other shapes inside of this one. Really, which ones? Bring some triangles in here. How many triangles can you fit inside of this trapezoid? How do you know? And show them how to do it. This is going to be a continuation of some of the work that we did earlier on the first day of this week and showing them how to fit in the shapes here. So you want to have these conversations. You want your children to see this. Are there some shapes that are hiding? Yes, there are 3 triangles hiding inside of a trapezoid. Sorry, let me go back to this one. How can you use this to help you find more than one way to fill in the big shapes? And this is the key understanding, right? We want to make sure that they can see the multiple ways of filling something in by learning how to manipulate the shapes to fit those needs, to fit the outline of what they have. Now, a lot of this, again, feels like play. That's the goal, right? You want it to feel like they're having a good time and this doesn't really work. But at the same time, you're able to understand and gauge whether your children can really follow these pattern shapes so that they can manipulate them to fill inside of the outlines. We want to make sure that the children get really comfortable using them to create these shapes so that we can see whether they are following the work or not. Let me really quickly go back one more second. Let's go back to this day. Day 12, the question is, how can we decompose flat shapes into 2 or more shapes? Decomposing the flat shapes into 2 or more shapes is the goal. So we can get our children to do that by playing around with the app, then we've succeeded, and they've succeeded too. All right, for colleagues, I will see you soon. Thank you for watching.